Hello, everyone. We are going to continue today our discussion about mass media in the US and in particularly regarding mass media and foreign policy decision-making process. It's an interesting topic to discuss, taking in consideration that in the US we are after the election campaign, and one of the topics was related to foreign policy and the impact of mass media. And also in Moldova, also you are after the election process, and foreign policy was among of one of the very important aspects of candidates to discuss about their policies and in what way they are going to rule the country. Well, as usually, I have here some slides and some videos which will help us to understand better the impact of mass media in foreign policy decision-making process. Let me try to share the museum like that. Okay, let's go further and look through the overview of our discussion today. First of all, we are going to analyze from theoretical perspective mass media and foreign policy decision-making process. After that, we are looking for different political communication regimes in different countries, the communication policy of different states, the correlation between economy, the development of economy and communication, different mass media channels in different countries and on the global level, and also about media functions, how they are influencing foreign policy. In the end, we will come to analyze media output and some concrete examples of media impact on foreign policy and correlation between mass media and foreign policy decision-making process. Okay, let's go step by step. First of all, from theoretical approach, the correlation between mass media and foreign policy decision-making process is not always included like a particular separate factor in the internal or external level of factors in case of foreign policy. For example, you can see here Glenn Snyder. He considers that internal and external factors of decision-making process in foreign policy includes mass media only on the internal level as a part of the correlations between other factors and foreign policy. Next one is considered the communication network factor, as Branch and Snyder consider that communication networks includes not only mass media per se, but also different types of possibility to create the communication with audience, communicating through their headquarters with their let's say workers, to distribute different flyers and so on, not exactly only mass media. And another aspect is considered that the most important is the role of image as a filtering mechanism, according to Papadakis and Starr, which means that creating an image for the candidate, creating an image for the country per se means a lot in case of projecting that image abroad. This means that not exactly mass media is creating that image, but all other factors are contributing to create that image, and that's why image as a collective factor, image as a concept is more important as mass media per se, mass media particularly. On the graphic level, we can, according to Naveh, we can see that the event, first of all, it's creating that possibility of image to project that image. You can see here exactly the concept of image being very important, being that filtering mechanism which will decide about decision-making process and which will decide further on the creation of that policy. You can see that in the beginning, mass media were not included particularly in this decision-making process of the foreign policy of a country, of a governmental institutions, and so on. Further, if we are looking particularly to analyze media and the foreign policy decision-making process, step-by-step researchers are trying to understand what is the impact on the foreign policy decision-making process and what kind of factors are determinant in this case. As different researchers came to agree, to be on the same page, that those factors are very important from this perspective. First of all, is the political communication regime, is the relationship between communication process and political regime in the country. We will discuss a little bit later particularly how this is influencing decision-making process regarding foreign policy. Next one is communication policy in the state, also the economy of political communication, the development of mass media, of different mass media channels, or correlation between the channels and their owners, and the development of economy in the country at all, the type of media market, it's also very important. Media channels on the national and on the international level affect the influence of mass media on foreign policy decision-making process. And we will go further and we will analyze one by one different media functions and how, in this case, media can influence the public related to foreign policy. Okay, let's go step by step. First of all, here you can see that this concept is the next one, which includes media environment. It's not only the image and not only the input on the decision-making process and the feedback on this, but also its media environment. This is the next level of understanding the media relationship with foreign policy, and this is next level to include in certain way media as very important factor on the internal level and on the international level, like external level, as a factor in foreign policy decision making process. This is a very relevant picture of NAVEC, including media environment in this decision making process. Okay, let's go step by step. We said that communication regime, political communication regime, is one of the very important factors. This means that different political regimes create different possibilities for mass media to act, to have this communication role, to information, to inform role in the society. Usually researchers are trying to categorize those regimes, and here you have four theories related to mass media in different societies. This is a correlation between communication and political regimes in different countries. First of all, this is considered authoritarian communication regime, which means that communication created in authoritarian political regime means that, first of all, mass media can be private, some of them, but mostly are owned by the government. The relationship between the government and mass media are strongly regulated. We can bring as an example, let's say, in Belarus, we may think about Russian example, Russia Federation in our days, when Kremlin is trying to accaparate a lot of mass media, to subordinate to their influence, creating the media, governmental media trust. We are looking, for example, the experience of launching Sputnik, which is not only oriented to the internal media audience, but also to about 130 countries in different languages, in special for those in the proximity of Russia Federation, so-called media abroad in this case. This type of authoritarian political communication means, first of all, the possibility of the government to control the distribution of mass media information. Next one, we can say Soviet or totalitarian regime. I guess this can be attributed to former Soviet Union. In nowadays, I assume we're speaking about North Korea as another example. What this means? This means that in former Soviet Union, we didn't have private mass media. We didn't have private newspapers, private TV stations, and so on. Everything was under the control of the government, and in special in case of Soviet Union, under the control of Communist Party. The information was strictly controlled, the information was strictly regulated, and we cannot say about the possibility to have the diversity of communication, mass media, or communication, or different mass media in that type of communication regime. Next one is social responsibility. This is considered one of the most advanced communication regimes which we can attribute nowadays to North European countries, which means that the government is in charge to provide different possibilities for different minority groups, for different gender or sexual minorities, different ethnical groups, to have their mass media. And mass media serves not only the interest of government, not only the interest of political parties, but mass media serve the interest of different groups in the society, which means that mass media is there to assure that everyone if he or she belongs to different groups, have the possibility to express their opinion in different mass media. This is considered one of the most progressive from democratic point of view of communication regimes. The next one is libertarian communication regimes, which can be attributed to developed democracies. First of all, we can attribute this to US, that in US we have libertarian regime. Practically, mass media has the possibility to operate in a free market, being a player on the media market. In this case, governmental structures do not have influence over the mass media, but in this case you can see the development of media corporations, of media, different mass media which are developing not only national but transnational corporations, and are becoming bigger and bigger on the global level, but we will discuss about this further. Those are four major concepts of political communication regimes, which some some researchers agreed upon that, and the major concept in this case, if you can see, is correlation. Who owns the media? Who is the media sponsors? Who finance the media? Who appoints the editors, and in what context media is censored or not. Means that if media operates in the free market, or as in the case of Soviet or authoritarian regimes, they are controlled by the government, first of all. From this perspective, some other academics are looking to put their other types of political communication regimes as development, and this can be also development political communication regimes, or in transition, when the country and the society is transitioning from one political regime to other. We can say that this also communication regime is in development, is in transition. And democratic participants is also the concept of political communication regime, when the democratic elements of mass media are there, but it's not entirely libertarian or social responsibilities in this case. If we are going further, and next part of a very important factor of mass media correlation to the decision-making process in foreign policy means the communication policy. Means, first of all, how the media market, different institutions, media institution, governmental and not governmental structures are influencing communication policy in the society, promoting or not competition, assuring competition between mass media, and pluralism of mass media is one of the very important possibility to mass media to operate in a free market, to be free to communicate from different perspectives, to bring their different points of view, and so on. To minimize the regulations, but in this case doesn't really mean that we need to eliminate completely the law regarding mass media. Minimize regulations means to minimize interference of governmental structures in the activity of mass media, but keep mass media under the control of certain law and regulations according to the let's say concept of free press, concept of honesty, and concept of respecting the rights of citizens and human rights, and so on. This doesn't mean that mass media can have infinite rights in the society. Also, preventing cross-ownership at certain point means, first of all, the possibility for different media to have this niche, to have that possibility to coexist with our other mass media, and do not permit over centralization, over let's say to not permit over centralization of different media, over monopolization of different media, as those monopoles will capture all the media and will not remain the space for different other voices in the society. Also, another aspect is very important about protecting copyrights, which means that the regulation about copyrights law must be respected in different society. Next aspect is about political economy of the media. The correlation between development of economy and communication system in the society is very important from the point of view of mass media being able to communicate different voices, to voice different opinions in the society. one of the very important aspects is advertising. Who is giving the advertising? Who is owning the advertising in industry, in the society? It's considered that advertising is one of the possibility for mass media to survive in a free market, in a market, in the society, and also on the international level. That's why in this case correlation you can see between large media corporations and not media corporations are mostly related to the possibility to attract and to survive because of the advertising and who is the sponsor of those advertising. You can see there that correlation between media economy and corporations or different non-media corporation mean, first of all, that different voices will be present on the national and international level, sometimes to bring alternative point of view, not exactly one which is promoted by mainstream media. That's why global corporations sometimes they have their interest and influence of media. Global corporations mean that only one voice can be promoted on the national and global level related to certain kind of candidate, to certain kind of countries, and in special on the global level, wealthy countries, developed democracies usually are dominating the media corporations and usually are dominating the media mainstream on the global level. And if some smaller countries, poor countries have their concern regarding foreign policy, regarding international organizations, international institutions, and so on, sometimes their voice is not present out there because global corporations, because media global corporations not always interested to put those voices in their page in case of newspaper or to air during their TV or radio programs. If we are going further, media channels and organizations is the continuation of that discussion that international channels usually have their interest, and we said about mainstream media channels and open media market means that in our days of globalization, more and more international media, global media have access to the internal market. And in this case, on the global level or step by step in different cases on the regional market, different more developed countries from economic point of view, and in this case they have the possibility to influence media and communication system in different countries. Probably here it's very interesting to analyze the influence of CNN, and I am sure that you analyzed the article regarding CNN effect in our days and when and how CNN is influencing decision-making process and what are the limitations of the influence of mass media and what are the limitations of CNN effect in foreign policy decision-making process. Further, we are looking for different functions of mass media. First of all, as we discussed in the beginning of our classes, mass media has information function. First of all, this means that mass media is providing some information, the latest news, what is happening in, let's say, in our city where we live, in our country, on the regional level, what is going on in the neighborhood countries, and also on the global level. We are turning to different TV channels, to newspapers, and in our days more and more to social media to find out what is in the news out there. Another aspect which in this context is very important is the watchdog function of media, and this is very important in case of foreign policy decision-making process. This means, as we discussed before, that mass media must keep the governmental structures accountable, to watch over the governmental institutions if they are not doing some wrong things, to watch over their wrongdoing in this case. Here we can attribute also to watch over governmental institutions, over corruptions, over overuse of power in case of internal and external affairs, and decision-making process regarding foreign policy. Mass media, as we said before, have this function of informing, but in the same time, mass media has this feedback possibility. If a lot of people will try to reach to mass media and to give this feedback about the different politicians, about different institutions. In this case, we can say that mass media will really provide this watchdog function in the society. Mass media also has this socialization process, and this is very important. The possibility of mass media to promote different values, different traditions, different concepts in the society is very important to give the next generation better understanding about the society's values, traditions, and family values, society values on different levels, and so on. That's why in case of socialization, we are saying that mass media is a very important factor, also as family, as different institutions, as schools, universities, army, different non-governmental organizations, civil society, and so on. Mass media is a part of that socialization process. Next function is the symbolic function, which means that mass media operates with some symbols. Mass media is trying to promote some kind of understanding of what is going on. It's considered that so much information, so much diverse information and different information, at certain point our brain cannot understand. That's why we need to accumulate that information in certain categories, in certain rubrics and certain symbols. And in this case, mass media has that possibility to promote certain kind of symbolic understanding of what is going on in economic, political, social life around us. Also, another very important aspect of media is to promote consensus in the society. Do not promote, let's say, political or ethnical division. Do not promote, let's say, other division in the society, as to promote understanding of the necessity of consensus, of peace, of collaboration, and so on. As an entertainment, mass media, it's also very present in our daily lives, and also advertising. We said that advertising is part of the mass media survival from economic point of view, and entertainment usually also provides some financial support for media, and it's for some diversity, some divertisement in day-by-day life of citizens. Further, we can see here that in case of decision-making process and possibility of media giving that output, media management is very important in relation to media environment. What kind of media environment is created in the society, and this means how this will influence, how this will impact the communication system in the society. In this case, we can go further and look for different correlation between mass media and news values. As we said, mass media is very related to different foreign policy decision-making process, and we said that practically mass media is influencing the decision-making process through different news which mass media is putting out there. The researchers and the scholars are looking for different aspects and different types of influencing the economic, political agenda and also foreign policy decision-making process. We are going to look through different relationship between mass media and news. First of all, agenda setting concept, framing, and spin. Let's go step by step. As we can see, agenda setting, first analyzed by Lippmann in 1922, developed further by Macombo and So in 1968, related to election campaign and related also to the possibility to influence foreign policy decision-making process of different political leaders and political decision-making team. You can see here how this process works. First of all, it's the correlation between possibility of media to select certain kind of topics. And we discussed before about the gatekeeper concept of mass media. Among different types of news, mass media is selecting only certain kind of news to put on the agenda. If we are looking from this perspective, media agenda, what is on the first place in mass media, what is in this case more covered by different newspapers, TV channels, is becoming public agenda. This means that public is discussing about this the next day. If we saw in the news in the morning, let's say, driving to our workplace, we saw, we heard on radio station, we have written about this in our social media. We read about this in newspapers. We are watching this in the evening when we are coming home on the TV, mean that we are discussing already about this. And more we discuss about this, this is becoming the reality of real world. And we are introducing this agenda to our personal experience. This is becoming our personal experience already. And in this case, step by step, this will become a policy agenda, and this will become one of the factors which is influencing foreign policy decision-making process. For example, here in US, during the election campaign, Trump, one of the candidates to the presidency, managed to dominate the news cycle. His sometimes different tapes or his Twitter messages became a media agenda. Next morning, if he was tweeting some kind of ideas in his Twitter account, 4 o'clock in the morning, in the morning, let's say in the media news, 7 o'clock, media reported about this. This became part of media agenda. This became part of public agenda, that everyone came to the workplace and discussed about this. It really doesn't matter sometimes how strange or how stupid that message was. It really doesn't matter that we agree or we disagree, and sometimes the researchers are saying that even negative message is more sticky to our conscience. We discussed about this longer, and we are concerned about this longer. In this case, this will become policy agenda, and this will become the further decision-making process. In this case, also one of the debated issue during the election campaign was a relationship between Trump and Putin, was a relationship between US and Russia. What kind of foreign policy Trump is going to promote if he is going to be elected, and in what relationship US is going to be regarding, let's say, NATO, development of NATO relationship with other countries, the development between US and Russia, and so on. This became the policy agenda related to foreign policy, because mass media was promoting those topics, those issues, and they became part of the public agenda, and they became part of the policy agenda in the end. About the impact of this, we will discuss a little bit later, and we will see that is not direct correlation between favorable news, positive news, and positive impact. Sometimes negative news and even news which we disagree with are becoming more and more influential finally to the public agenda and to the policy agenda, and this is not what we expected in the first place. Let's move further, and we said about public agenda setting. Let's go further and discuss about next topic, next factor, which is framing. Volkswagen in 1993 discussed about creating an image and a filter of reality about framing. This means that possibility of mass media to present the very complicated and very diverse reality in certain kind of way, to compress the diversity, to compress the different aspects of reality in a certain kind of images, certain kind of prospects which will fit in this concept. Here you have pictures of framing. Means, first of all, summary of the concept of children of 9/11 are represented like this white girl who lost her father or her brother and so on. This really doesn't mean that all the children of 9/11 were only white. Not this means that people of different colors, different ethnical background, different gender became the victims of 9/11. And this really doesn't mean that only those children are like this, and this is a collective image of children of 9/11. The same here, the children of Bin Laden. It's the framing of different concepts of, let's say, terrorists, and the framing of the part of the population which can be attributed to that concept of good and evil in this case. Here you have different examples of framing. Freedom or terror. You can qualify half and part of the groups to the promoting freedom in certain countries and certain societies, or other groups, as Bush pointed out during the war on terror, you are with us or you are against us in this case. Other aspect of framing can be the spread of democracy. The concept of spreading democracy or humanitarian intervention means that sometimes different actions in case of foreign policy can be attributed to this concept. We are acting because we want to spread of democracy, regardless that sometimes this means interfering in the internal affairs of different states, or regardless that humanitarian intervention means sometimes destroying the life and the livelihood of people in different other countries. And quagmire means that the country is so under influence of bad regimes, of totalitarian, authoritarian regimes, that external factors must interfere to deal with that rogue state or different failed societies and so on. Next one, let's discuss about the spin, which means initiating a coverage, give and take relationship, which Gergen discussed in 1991 and Cook in 1993, and other scholars developed this concept of spin, meaning, first of all, that in case of newspapers, this means that to promote certain ideas on the level of using truthful and not truthful information, and promoting over and over again as propaganda, and putting those news on the front page, repeating over and over again next day, and so on. This is spin doctor process or spin doctor technique in case of news paper. In case of TV stations, mean, first of all, putting the concept of certain ideas in the beginning of news stations, news informations channels, and also repeating several times during the day, and also mean how long the news program is devoting to this topic, how many minutes, how long this is discussed about, and so on. One of the spin concept mean repetition. It's very important for this topic to be present in different mass media, in the same mass media, in special on TV programs. The spin mean, first of all, to promote a certain kind of images and to promote certain kind of stereotypes which will deny the reality and will inflict certain ideas in the society. Here you have a concept of National Socialism, which some news media promoted during the Obama campaign, that Obama is National Socialist, as was Hitler. Or other one, that Obamacare means really that Obama is going to perform Obamacare as those Indians in America before colonialization. Or the spin doctor mean patriotism, mean no questioning, that everything government is promoting on the international level, we must not question as citizens. Means that the concept, the message from our Homeland Security organizations are right all the time. We should not question, we should not raise any concerns about this. This means that we are patriots in this case. Another one is also the discussion about gun control here in US, about the right of people to carry a gun, Fifth Amendment to your US Constitution, which is also a very important aspect. If we are looking from the point of view of media management and foreign policy, usually mass media will promote a relationship with different governmental institutions to put out their different press conferences, briefings related to foreign policy decisions, interviews with governmental officials related to foreign policy, organizing media events when political leaders or governmental institutions are inviting media as part of that event as to promote certain foreign policy ideas. And media leaking information means sometimes that politicians are interested how this will react, how this will resonate with the audience, and for them to see the reaction of the audience to different, let's say, ideas which they have regarding internal and as well foreign policy in this case. If we are looking for media spin in foreign policy, first of all, we can see that officials can disregard or ignore the press if the concept of their foreign agenda is not the same as media discussion. They can develop a spin, they can put out their agenda related to foreign policy, and another aspect can be that the government can adopt a policy that is media oriented. They can include media in their foreign policy promotion of those concepts. In this case, means that, let's see further, that the environment is not only about the image and media output, but also about the feedback and internal media environment on the national level, and also, as we said, about international media environment. In this case, it's very important to remember that media is acting on different levels. Media is acting on the national level, and media is acting on the international level as well. Let us go further and discuss about different examples of foreign policy and mass media. Here I have a video related to Watergate scandal. When mass media developed and media were involved in developing this scandal, developing this story, as 5 men were captured in the Democratic headquarters. Further came out that they related to high officials, to the president of the country, and so on. Let us watch first the video, and after that we will try to analyze the role of the media in this scandal. Let's see if this works.
This was one of the biggest political scandals in American history. Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we'll be learning more about the Watergate scandal.
The thing that's so appalling to me is that the president, when this whole idea was suggested to him, didn't in righteous indignation rise up and say, get out of here, you're in the office of the President of the United States. How can you talk about blackmail and bribery and keeping witnesses silent?
In mid-1971, the Pentagon Papers were leaked. That report proved that administrations from Truman to Johnson had intentionally expanded their Vietnam War efforts, in contrast to what the public was told. The Nixon administration then panicked and formed a covert group to halt leaks. Nixon advisor John Ehrlichman assembled the White House plumbers and included former CIA agent E. Howard Hunt and former FBI agent G. Gordon Liddy. Soon, the president's political rivals were recorded on Nixon's enemies list. Politicians, journalists, and even Hollywood actors Nixon feared could stop his re-election were included and were harassed by the administration with tax audits, legal action, and more. Prior to the 1972 election, the Republicans created a committee for the re-election of the president, or CRP. John Mitchell stepped down as Attorney General to chair that committee. The CRP used questionable and illegal means to achieve their goal. For example, Mitchell kept a slush fund to subsidize information gathering on the Democrats. Ultimately, a plan was approved to bug and steal information from the Democratic National Committee headquarters at the Watergate Hotel. On June 17, 1972, during the second of these break-ins, the burglars were arrested.
The Democratic National Committee is trying to solve a spy mystery. It began before dawn Saturday when 5 intruders were captured by police inside the offices of the committee in Washington.
The FBI quickly linked those arrested with Hunt. Because of Hunt's connection to the plumbers, Nixon ordered his chief of staff, Bob Haldeman, to instruct the CIA to block further FBI investigation into the finances behind the Watergate break-in. The cover-up began.
Mr. Nixon, did you know about the burglary of our Democratic National Headquarters at the Watergate?
The Nixon administration then officially denied involvement in the burglary. However, more clues emerged that conflicted with this. Aside from the Hunt connection, one of the burglars was a Republican Party aide, and a paper trail led to the CRP. On June 20th, Washington Post journalists Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein reported on the Hunt connection, with confirmation from their anonymous source, Deep Throat. This team was instrumental in unraveling the Watergate case and in implicating the Justice Department, the FBI, the CIA, and the White House. In 2005, Deep Throat was revealed as former FBI Deputy Director Mark Felt. By September 1972, the burglars, Hunt and Liddy, were indicted by a grand jury. Despite connections to the scandal, Nixon was decisively re-elected that November. The burglars pleaded guilty before Hunt and Liddy went to trial in early '73. The scandal soon exploded when many of the administration's important figures were implicated. In April, 4 top Nixon aides lost their jobs due to their involvement in the cover-up. Haldeman, Ehrlichman, Attorney General Richard Kleindienst, and White House lawyer John Dean. Official investigations began in mid-1973, led by Senator Sam Ervin and Special Prosecutor Archibald Cox. They proved the connection between the burglary and the White House and CRP. Dean became a valuable witness when he divulged Nixon knew about the cover-up. In July, Nixon assistant Alexander Butterfield explosively revealed the existence of Nixon-installed recording devices throughout the White House. Those tapes were subpoenaed. However, Nixon refused to release them, citing executive privilege.
This principle of confidentiality of presidential conversations is at stake in the question of these tapes. I must and I shall oppose any efforts to destroy this principle, which is so vital to the conduct of this great office.
To save himself, Nixon dismissed the Attorney General, his deputy, and Cox in the Saturday Night Massacre. Public outcry followed, and Nixon responded with one of his most quoted speeches in November '73.
People have got to know whether or not their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook. I've earned everything I've got.
By March, the Watergate Seven were indicted. Many spent time in prison, and though Nixon was named, he remained unindicted. The Watergate tapes were finally released in July 1974. An 18-minute erased section proved controversial. Of the exposed facts, it was found that some involved in the break-in had received hush money. Most importantly, the smoking gun tape undeniably proved Nixon knew about the cover-up since mid-1972. Nixon was forced to step down or face impeachment. On August 8, 1974, Nixon resigned and was replaced by Gerald Ford. Exactly 1 month later, Ford officially pardoned him. This controversy resulted in multiple arrests, the creation of new laws, renewed interest in investigative journalism, and the first resignation of a U.S. president. The Watergate scandal undoubtedly changed American politics forever.
Okay, here you had an story which is considered the involvement of mass media to reveal the wrongdoing of politicians and the investigative journalism to bring to the light and bring to the public those cover-up actions of president, of different other governmental institutions, and so on. But in the same time, some scholars are arguing that, first of all, maybe this just came to be the relationship between different governmental institutions, and mass media was allowed, and mass media had the possibility to discuss and to present those controversial issues. And sometimes scholars are saying that was not exactly the mass media effort to discover this, but was first of all the movement from people from different institutions, from different organizations, and media reported about this as part of the environment of on the national level. Another example which we are going to analyze today, it's a failure in case of Iraq war and failure of mass media to try to understand if Iraq had weapons of mass destruction before starting the war. And we said about this very important function of mass media watchdog and do the investigation before the event, which is considered that mass media in US failed to do that. Let us watch this example.
It was a drumbeat, a deafening drumbeat in the wake of 9/11 as President Bush, Vice President Cheney, and other top officials warned that Iraq had amassed a stockpile of illegal weapons and began building a case for war. And the media all too often acted as an echo chamber.
We don't want the smoking gun to be a mushroom cloud.
The read we get on the people of Iraq is there's no question but what they want to get rid of Saddam Hussein, and they will welcome as liberators the United States when we come to do that.
The White House hopes to call for a vote on the deadline resolution early next week. If it passes, then by March 17th, as a senior official, Saddam Hussein will finally be out of final opportunity. But even if it doesn't pass, the president has left no doubt that he's ready to go to war.
This is Fox News and Fox News Channel continuing coverage of the campaign which now has begun to liberate and disarm Iraq.
Joining us now, Rajiv Chandrasekharan, senior correspondent and associate editor of the Washington Post and author of the book Little America, which is just out in paperback. Mark Thompson, who covers national security and the military for Time Magazine. And back with us is Fred Francis, former NBC senior correspondent and the founder of 15seconds.com. Rajiv, didn't most of the media, benefit of hindsight, get rolled by the Bush administration during this run-up to war?
Look, there was a lot of uncritical reporting out there. I make no excuses for it. But I think it's a little too simplistic to say the press just rolled over for the Bush administration. Take, for instance, the principal claim that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. These were claims made by the senior-most officials of government. They are citing intelligence reports. Putting aside some of the more extreme stuff, I'm not going to apologize for some of Judy Miller's coverage in the New York Times, for instance. But when it comes to some of these claims, it's not like journalists who have good sources in the world of national security establishment can just drive up to Langley and say to the CIA, "Hey, look, let me see the source material for
you." You are right, with this exception. I reported on this when I was at the Washington Post. There was something like 140 front-page pieces between August 2002 and the date of the invasion, basically carrying the administration's case for war. And on the occasions when some very good reporters wrote pieces that challenged or were skeptical of intelligence, those stories were buried, they were minimized, they were spiked. And Bob Woodward told me himself that he felt he should have tried harder to get past the groupthink. He said he was part of the groupthink. So I agree that this wasn't an easy case to crack, but
listen, I'll admit, I didn't do a great job. I thought I was one of the best national security correspondents in Washington, and I didn't do a great job. However, this is not easy work to do. Not one intelligence agency in the world, not just the CIA, but no intelligence agency, not the Mossad, not even Saddam's people knew that he didn't have that weapons of mass destruction.
It's worth noting, Howie, that not only did the U.S. government exaggerate his potential possession of weapons of mass destruction, but Saddam wanted everybody to believe he had weapons of mass destruction.
To make him look stronger with his own people.
Right, so it really looked like a true hall of mirrors.
Let's recall the atmosphere in the wake of 9/11 when some journalists were wearing flag pins on the air, some networks banned that. There was an undercurrent that if you doubted, if you were too skeptical of what Bush and Cheney and Rice and Rumsfeld were saying, that maybe you didn't support the troops, that you were unpatriotic.
I mean, it's important to, I know Fred knows this, but Cheney was defense secretary during the first Gulf War. There was a sense of trust that many of the military reporters had for him. Now that was ruined later on, but the fact of the matter was we had a Saddam Hussein hangover from the first Gulf War. Then we had Saddam Hussein trying to kill the elder President Bush in Kuwait, allegedly, in 1993. And then 9/11 happened. I mean, there really was this sort of snowballing kind of thing, and the press to some degree was taken for a ride.
I won't disagree with that, but I didn't want to be with the troops. When I went to war, I snuck into Iraq so I could be with the Kurds in New York, because those were the only ones that really knew that there were weapons of mass destruction. Saddam had killed tens of thousands of Kurds with poison gas. But even there, Howie, the CIA guys that I worked with in the north, the special forces guys, even Jalal Talabani, the president of Iraq today, they believed he had weapons of mass destruction. So who was I to say that they weren't?
Well, since you say you snuck in, it leads me to a question I was going to ask you in a couple minutes, and that is the whole embedding program created by the Pentagon. A lot of people thought this was great. Reporters get to be on the front line, see combat, some were killed, some were injured. On the other hand, it was enabled commanders and even soldiers to, many people thought, spin the press, and in some isolated cases censor their copy.
I'm of that group. I didn't want to be embedded. I could have had my pick of units because I was the Pentagon correspondent for so long. I didn't want that feeling that I had to protect or not report on something. And those who were embedded did some great reporting, as it turned out. But what stories were not covered? I don't know that.
I want to come back to you, Richard, because I understand what you're saying, which is this was you couldn't go to Iraq without getting killed. You couldn't go to the CIA. Even if you had been able to walk the halls of the CIA, most of the CIA analysts believe, and whether that was cooked or exaggerated by their higher-ups, that in fact the evidence pointed to WMDs. But then you had this extraordinary sequence of events where the New York Times read an editor's note saying that it printed too many credulous claims about Saddam and Iraq. The then editor of the Washington Post, Len Downey, told me he had made a mistake in not putting more of those skeptical stories on the front page. So even people who ran these news organizations seemed to acknowledge that they had fallen short.
Indeed, and there was far more that we all could have done. You could go to Iraq. I was in Iraq for the bulk of the 6 months leading up to the war. What you couldn't really do is get an independent assessment of what Saddam really had. You could accompany UN weapons inspectors, but it was all a dog and pony show. But it wasn't just the issue of weapons of mass destruction. It was the broader questions. What's the political transition plan? Truth squatting the White House's claims that Iraq could pay for the reconstruction of its country. The questions of the long simmering tensions between the principal religious and ethnic groups in the country. These were questions that were all easily reportable. They should have had more coverage. We didn't do enough in really aggressively looking at all of that.
That's a really salient point. But then on the tone, television did put some voices on the air that were either anti-war or skeptical of the claims about Saddam, but they tended to be Hollywood celebrities. I had the actress Janine Garofalo on this program in early 2003. She said, we're put on the air and then we're condescended to. You don't really know anything, and that became the face of the anti-war movement. So I'm wondering whether or not we collectively, journalists, could have done a better job of seeking out those who were, in fact, skeptical. Let me go to Mark Pelton.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting, you mentioned the echo chamber effect here. And the echo chamber effect was set by the New York Times. The New York Times got a leak saying, hey, aluminum tubes are going to be used to build nuclear weapons. And then, senior members of the administration go on TV and point at that leak as if you know, they didn't plant that leak. All the other big media tended to follow the Times, and it took people at Knight Ridder, my old outfit, to say, now, wait a minute. We are going to do some of this reporting that Rajiv is talking about and ask some tough questions. But they were sort of, you know, sidelined because they weren't a big outfit.
Half a minute. So now we deal with Iran, we deal with Libya, we deal with Syria, we deal with North Korea. Have the media collectively learned the lesson of not the utter failure, at least the shortcomings of Iraq 10 years ago?
The fact is that when President Obama asked a senior CIA official whether he was certain that Osama bin Laden was in Abbottabad, he said, yes, I'm certain, but I was also more certain there was WMD in Iraq. So
who said that?
A senior CIA official told Obama that. Okay,
There are no certainties.
That's right. So we're still going to make mistakes, both the CIA and journalists.
All right, Fred Francis, Mark Thompson, Rajiv Chandrasekaran, thanks very much.
Here, it's an example when it's considered that media failed to have investigative journalists to try to ask more questions before the officials, the political officials, the official political leaders of the country could have a decision regarding foreign policy. And also it's an example that during the Iraq war, mass media was used as media spin to invite journalists to cover the military operations from the governmental point of view, and journalists were not allowed to go in other parts of the, let's say, that war, and they did not have so much access to CIA papers and so on. In this case, the major question is media going to learn this lesson and to look further for further foreign policy decision-making processes when media is very important to realize, to put in place that watchdog function and to watch over the governmental institutions. Okay, this is it for today. All the best.